Hi, thanks very much for the opportunity today to talk about an ethical dilemma that I've experienced in the past during my career. The situation that comes to mind is an ethical dilemma that emerged in the context of organizing a training on Indigenous rights and advocacy for diplomats based in the Americas, Canadian diplomats based in the Americas. And it was in organizing this that I realized a mural which colleagues of mine had recently installed in the embassy had not been consulted, and in my mind reflected some sensitive history, images that were sensitive from Canada's history, in particular sensitive for Indigenous populations. And as a result, I felt the need to engage in a discussion around this mural in order to ensure that ethically we could continue to have it on the wall at the embassy, but in particular during a conversation intended to address Indigenous rights. So I'm going to run you through my thought process in responding to this. Obviously, I needed to assess the situation. I then did some research to find out a little bit more about values and ethics policies to which we need to adhere. Pardon me. I consulted with a range of people before taking a decision, made a plan, implemented the plan, and then saw the results and reported back to necessary people on that. So going back to the beginning, as I mentioned, the assessment. So I mean, really, I think when it comes to ethical decisions and situations, there's a gut feeling, if I'm really honest. I know that's not technical, but I think really listening to myself, looking inward, and digging down on what was bothering me. Why did it feel inappropriate? What are my assumptions? What was the issue that I felt I was needing to engage on? I wanted to make sure that I wasn't assuming anything around this, and of course, being non-Indigenous, that meant that it wasn't my place to be offended on behalf of others, but it was very much my place to be respectful, to listen, and to be a role model in engaging on ethical issues and issues of respect for other cultures and peoples in our embassy space. So next up was research, because I wanted to get a better sense of policies around this issue. So the problem was that in this case there wasn't anything overtly offensive, so there was no direct instruction. I looked at the values and ethics policy and also some anti-discrimination tools, but again, in this sense, it was more the spirit of what was behind it. So after looking at what policy documents might help provide some guidance, I consulted. So I spoke to trusted colleagues at the mission, Canadians who have an awareness of Canadian history and some of the sensitivities that might exist. Unfortunately, I don't have any colleagues that have Indigenous background, so I felt it was really important to make sure I was consulting some people who could speak on that perspective. And GAC, Global Affairs Canada, has a special representative on Indigenous issues, pardon me. She's based at the permanent mission to the UN, and actually Leah Nicholas Mackenzie happened to be coming for the training that we were organizing. So I was already in touch with her, and I reached out to her and communicated what the mural looked like, what I was thinking, and very respectfully and openly deferred to her and said, you know, what are your thoughts on this? Very transparently, feel free to let me know, is this being overstated? Am I imagining some of these things? Can we host a group of people and talk about Indigenous rights and be consistent and coherent if this is on the wall in the room right beside where the training is happening? And I also spoke to Ham to let him know that I was having a bit of a dilemma around this issue, as well as the training coordinator, who was thinking very deeply about these issues as I was while we collaborated on pulling this training together. So what I What I heard in my consultations was that there were other people who had the same level of discomfort as I did with this, and really saw it as something that wasn't maybe reflective of where the Prime Minister sat on this particular issue in many speeches, in the speech from the throne, in government policy, in the mandate letters. We've seen that our relationship as Canadians to Indigenous populations in our country is one of the most important, is the most important relationship for us. And so that really was an important consideration in this, and the mural in the embassy didn't reflect that. We needed to make sure that cultural values were upheld, and we needed to make sure that it was an environment, a space that was conveying respect to others, a safe space. And so the general discomfort was a good indicator that we needed to take action. So when formulating the plan, I wanted to make sure that it didn't become something controversial at the embassy. It was something that we could deal with in a fairly direct way and then have conversations around afterwards. So I spoke to the HOM, I spoke to the MCO, and did what was necessary to process a work order and just have the mural removed. It was done on something that was easily removable, so it didn't take very long. And to be honest, afterwards, not very many people even noticed one way or the other. I did bring it up at CMM as well, our mission management meeting, to advise everyone that that this had been done. This would be our course of action. I explained why this was our course of action, and I also invited all managers as well as their staff to take part in the training. I think at this point it's important to provide maybe a little bit of detail around the training. It came out of the Truth and Reconciliation report that one of the commitments we needed to make as a public service was to better educate ourselves on Indigenous history and rights, and so that was actually what the training was about. And so this mural ended up becoming a really useful tool for me. What began as an ethical dilemma, it became a tool for me to use within the mission to deepen our understanding on this topic, and to become a bit of a learning moment for all of us. So everyone was, through the management meeting, invited to take part in the training. We had space, unfortunately, could accommodate that. And there was I think one, possibly two people that specifically asked about what happened to the mural, and so that was a question that I was prepared for, and I wanted to make sure we could have in a really open way, and so I did that with a couple people who were concerned, and again, I think it was received very well, and it was really a question of probably not enough consultation and reflection on the mural itself before it went up, and so I think everyone agreed in hindsight that it was better for all of us, but particularly in advance of this training. So that was the kind of monitoring. Results were really that I think we were able to create a more thoughtful, respectful, trusting space. That we were able to go through the process in a way that communicated what was happening, helped people to understand, and I think helped educate us all in the process, which was the spirit of the training itself. We had 25 people that we were able to invite from across the region to come and learn more about this topic. And overall, I think in my own case, it was reassuring to, I think it was a personal growth experience, but it was reassuring to know that, as I mentioned at the beginning of my response, that gut instinct is there when we have a bit of a conflict of values or when there's something that doesn't feel quite right, and that to reach out to other people and better understand what that means and what we need to do to address it in order to make sure that we're upholding Canadian values was really a growth moment. So thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to you about this today.